Hello and welcome back to Dystopia Now. I'm Kate Willett.
I'm Emil Torres.
Happy New Year!
Thank you.
It's been off to a weird start already. New York is communist now. I'm just kidding. I wish. Yeah.
Somebody tweeted, I saw this yesterday or today. They said that they tried their 7-day free trial of 2026 and they'd like to cancel, which just captures, I think, the sentiment that so many of us have right now. I mean, 2026, boy, has it started with a complete dumpster fire. Oh my God.
It always is, man. Whenever Trump is the president, just something fucking crazy or like 12 crazy things happen in the first week. It was just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Man. He's so
I just
nuts.
wrote an article about crisis fatigue. I don't know of a better term. Just given the endless onslaught of one terrible thing after another. It's completely overwhelming. And it's just, it's emotionally impossible. We have finite emotional resources, and it's just impossible to attend to all of these different, aspects of the polycrisis at once. And that presents a very serious problem because we have to. It can't be the case that we stop caring about climate change because there is a genocide happening in Gaza. And it can't be the case that we stop caring about the genocide in Gaza because ICE is, plucking people off the street and sending them to the concentration camp known as CCOT in El Salvador. It can't be the case that we stop caring about that because, Trump is threatening to annex Greenland and so on, right? But the problem is that we even though we can't, we shouldn't stop caring about all of these at once. We just cannot, as human beings, actually care about them.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
And in case anyone is watching on video, I just want to say that if you saw me start to smile and laugh, I'm really sorry. I can't hear the phrase Trump is threatening to annex Greenland without just laughing at this point. I know it's horrible. I don't support it in any way. I think it's really bad for real reasons, but it's also it's so fucking crazy. What the fuck is wrong with this guy? He's just an insane idiot. What's going on? It's so stupid.
Did you see that Stephen Miller's wife tweeted out an image of Greenland covered in the US flag? And she said soon, right? So
yeah, no, I saw that shit, man. Stephen Miller's wife. I mean, what does it gotta take to be married to that guy? He's just so. I mean, oh my God, he's so disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, he's just. I mean, ever since he was in high school, he's been a pretty nefarious, evil character, right? There are videos of him from high school, on a bus, talking about how torture is a way to preserve human dignity. And, torture is good. He's basically making that argument. I spoke to a friend of mine who recently fled the US, just like I have, and moved to Nova Scotia. And she was saying that everybody in the area is talking about the possibility of war with the US. And so I looked it up, and there are some articles from Canadian, news websites talking about basically plans that Canada is now making, contingency plans if they end up going to war with the US. It's absolutely insane. And from my perspective, there's a not implausible scenario in which Trump's actions, his imperialistic agenda, could sort of pull the entire world into a global conflict. I mean, if he tries to annex Greenland, that is the end of NATO. Right? People in NATO have said that. It's the end of NATO. At this point, Canada's part of NATO. Greenland is so close to Canada that Canadians are anxious about him trying to take over Greenland. What does that mean for the future of Canada? So then you have a Canada, NATO nations minus the US kind of alliance fighting the US, which is the perfect opportunity for other global great powers around the world, like Russia and China, to leap at the opportunity to wound the U.S. while it's in the midst of war. So there's just this very plausible, at least to my mind, cascade of events that could be triggered by Trump's actions, and he seems to be emboldened and ever more hubristic, given the kind of muted response around the world to his illegal kidnapping of Maduro in Venezuela. So, anyways, this just has me really anxious about the state of the world and the future of our civilization.
It's crazy. I mean, it is just absolutely nuts. This guy is just, he's fucking out of control. For real.
And in everything I just said, I didn't mention climate change, right? And also
Yeah.
the way that that Venezuelan oil ties into climate change, because Venezuela oil is really dirty, right? Like,
Oh, it is?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And Venezuela is sitting on the largest oil reserves of any country in the world. So if there are
Yeah.
billions of dollars that are invested in modernizing the oil infrastructure there, and that oil starts flowing, I mean, that is going to contribute, very significantly to the climate change problem. Even if like emissions elsewhere in the world are continuing to decline, this could potentially compensate for that in some like, non-trivial way. So it's
Well, not to mention the thing that we always talk about on the show is AI data centers. They're building so many now. There's so many new plans for it, and it's like, I mean, it's just crazy that we're like, oh, can we, take on this just giant, massive additional source of emissions so that I can generate a video of a raccoon singing me happy birthday? Like, no, it's so stupid. But I mean, and obviously that's not the real reason, right? Like the raccoon video probably would at least be like sort of cute. What they're trying to do is, break labor power, which is way more sinister.
yeah, yeah. Did you see?
I don't want to give raccoons a bad name here. They're self-domesticating, which is very cute.
Did
Yeah.
you see the video of Trump dancing as Childish Gambino in This Is America?
No. Oh
Yeah.
God. Ew.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. I couldn't tell if they were making fun of Trump or not, but either way, it's just another example of the extraordinary and rapid enslopification of the internet, right? I mean, that's the other thing. It's not just like the energy use of the AI data centers. It's what is that energy being used for, right? If there's a good use, perhaps you could justify, right, an increase in like a greater need for energy, right, for some good purpose. But these are just like
Right.
mass.
Like if we were going to build, okay, like I'm trying to think, if we were going to be like, okay, you know what? There's a human right to housing now.
Yeah.
We are going to build homes for every single person who is now homeless and, some extra so that nobody's homeless ever again.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like we have to do it. Let's look at how to offset the emissions in some other
Yeah.
ways. But this is not that.
No, I mean, these are just mass and slopificatory machines.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know why you're trying not to swear, but yeah. But so yeah, today anyway, we did want to talk about some of the connections to this crazy news that we're seeing and some of the themes that we talk about on the show. Greenland, Venezuela. In a vacuum, this stuff seems like it's maybe a kind of completely separate thing than these like extreme tech idiots, tech oligarchs, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
nutcases, libertarians. But actually, they have their hands in the pots of these horrific news items that we're
Yeah.
seeing.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, this isn't a new thing, but the tech world, Silicon Valley, has been merging with the MAGA world. I saw just recently, this must have been a couple of weeks ago, I think this was first made public, that Greg Brockman, who's one of the co-founders of OpenAI, is the number one donor to Trump, right? So that's, and obviously Sam Altman, back in early 2025 when Trump was sworn in, he stood there in the White House, and made some very complimentary statements about Trump, how like once he's gotten up close, he's seen up close the way Trump operates. He's been very impressed. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a really good article, a very short article, but it was tagged with an interview with Jacob Silverman, who we've had on the show before, and
Yeah, he's great.
he's great. Yeah, and someone else who were appearing on the Nerd Reich, Gildoran's podcast. In this very short article that Gil posted, he notes that Mark Lutter, who's the executive director of the Charter Cities Institute, issued a public call for Trump to put a freedom city in Venezuela, right? Freedom city is basically Trump's term for the network state ideology, right?
And the Charter Cities Institute, they are one of the players in this VC-backed push to build these little libertarian cities in the United States, right?
Yeah.
Because so far they've only been abroad, and they sound really mysterious and sinister, and I think that they are in some ways, but essentially what they are is just building a special economic zone in the United States, and an SEZ. There's SEZs all over the world, but the idea is, there is a place within a country that is not subject to the same laws as the other places in that country. They're not subject to the same taxes. They're not subject to the same regulations. And, the tech bros have really been a fan of this idea of the SEZ, and kind of, it's not just about having a factory. It's about a chance to experiment with libertarian governance, with no labor laws, with cryptocurrency as the currency, and they've kind of taken this idea of special economic zones, which already existed, and kind of merged them with their idea of network states. I'm not a fan of the special economic zones, but they've been a core part of neoliberalism for a long time. Yeah. There's some in China, India, Pakistan, UAE, Russia, Bangladesh. Like, they exist in the world. But the idea from folks like Peter Thiel and Patry Friedman and the kind of tech-aligned folks who are involved in these is that, this is going to be, these zones are going to be sort of a pathway to demonstrating that libertarian governance can work, and eventually the whole United States can be like that. I almost don't want to give that idea like a ton of oxygen because it's so stupid, but they are trying, and it is affecting the political decisions that they're making now.
Yeah. Speaking of a state or a region that is governed by libertarian principles, Argentina just got billions of dollars from the U.S. because they're like far-right, like libertarian leader. He implemented the principles of his ideology, and it resulted in just a disastrous situation that the U.S. now, with our taxpayer dollars, is bailing out. It's nuts. So I don't know how many examples of.
It's an Ayn Rand-ass move, be a libertarian and then just fucking collect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know that there was a political scientist who have been friends with for many years, and he makes the argument that libertarianism, what that leads to always is oligarchy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and then it's someone like Peter Thiel, they obviously know that, right? They're not like, that's, libertarian is almost it's a false term for what they actually are, because, especially where the tech community has moved, they want actually an extremely strong state. Yeah. They want to have defense contracts. Yeah. They just want it to be about, protecting capital, not workers, right?
Exactly.
They want a government that is fully imperialist and, overthrowing heads of state and other independent nations. So they're not really libertarians, but it's libertarianism for thee and not for me. You know?
Absolutely. So I will get back to this Mark Lutter of the Charter Cities Institute quote. So this is a public call issued for Trump, again, to put this freedom city in Venezuela. And I was more or less quoting earlier from Gildoran's article, just to be clear. So Mark Lutter says, Venezuela doesn't need to become another Iraq. It needs a freedom city. The mission is not endless war. It is to end a criminal regime without another $1 trillion disaster. Reality, the old system is still there. Corrupt courts, cartels, broken institutions, fixing everything at once won't work. So don't fix everything. Start with one city that actually works, a freedom city, and then =, new land, new rules, real property rights, real rule of law, jointly built with the U.S. So
Gross.
Yeah. So it's just really
Yeah.
interesting to see these two worlds. To see the examples of that territory in between at the intersection of the Venn circles, right? The tech world and their
Right.
obsession with the network state and freedom cities, and basically building a kind of libertarian utopia. We mentioned before when we bring up the TESCREAL movement that the backbone of the TESCREAL movement is transhumanism, and the particular strain
Yeah.
of transhumanism that is most relevant is the libertarian strain, because that's the strain that has mixed with Silicon Valley ideologies, right?
And these freedom cities, network states, whatever you want to call them, they've affected Trump's imperialism in other ways. A comment that a lot of people were making after Trump arrested, I don't even want to say arrested because he kidnapped
Kidnapped.
Maduro,
Yeah.
right? He fucking kidnapped Maduro for, I mean, so
For
people
possessing
were
machine
comparing
guns.
it.
That was one of the
Yeah,
charges.
and the kind of overarching claim that Trump has been making, as you know, they've been bombing these
Yeah.
fishermen. There was a situation, weeks back where there was a boat and the boat was bombed, and then Pete Hegseth personally ordered the killing of the survivors, called a double tap, which is a disgusting
Quite a
term, but
euphemism.
I mean, like, there's no evidence that these people had anything to do with drugs. I mean, they don't have a trial. Even if they did have a trial, it's not like execution would be the punishment,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, it's just so horrible. But this whole thing has been, pretending that, oh, we're doing this because, Venezuelan cartels are smuggling drugs into the United States, fentanyl, and that, Maduro is facilitating this, allowing this, working with these gangs. It's all just completely bunk. There's no evidence for it. But there is evidence of drug trafficking in some cases, and that's not Venezuela. The former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted in a trial of conspiring to import cocaine into the United States, tons of it, hundreds of tons of it.
Legitimate court,
Trump,
legitimate trial. Found guilty.
yeah, Trump pardoned him. Trump pardoned the
Yeah.
guy. Now, I'm not really opposed to pardoning the guy because I don't think that Trump should be, I don't think that the U.S. should be involved in any of this shit, right? Like, the U.S., we got to deal with our own situation. But it seems, I think, bizarre in some ways that, Trump is pardoning this guy, this huge, this powerful man who's trying to import, 400 tons of cocaine into the country. And then he's murdering fishermen.
Yeah.
Murdering fishermen and pardoning a drug lord. Okay, well, why is he doing that? I definitely think that, part of the reason could be because of these, like, libertarian colonies. Honduras, if you may remember, is the site of Prospera,
Yeah.
which is kind of one of the original OG tech bro network state experiments. We talked about that on the show, but, they have this special economic zone in Honduras where, it's a Bitcoin colony. Everything you pay for is in cryptocurrency. There's a lot of, biomedical experimentation there. There's a video online of Padre Friedman, grandson of Milton Friedman. He's one of the major investors in Prospera, who, is down there visiting, and he's gotten some medical experiments done on himself, where he's had bacteria implanted into his mouth that allegedly prevents cavities. I don't know if this motherfucker has ever heard of just, like, brushing his teeth. That's important, I mean, but he had a Tesla key implanted into his hands, and basically no one lives in Prospera year round. These, tech people they have, like, LLCs that are registered there. It's basically functioning as a tax haven, and a place to have mansions. I think one construction worker there already died because there's no labor laws, and it's an experiment with, just having the sort of lawless society that they want in the United States, but it's also colonial. They're displacing Honduran people. They're exploiting Honduran workers that live next door. It's a gated, mystery aside, it's a gated mansion community for rich U.S. people, mostly white, right next to Honduran villages where, they can have those Honduran workers come in and exploit them, and there's no particular rules about how they treat them. Well, Hernandez's party is the one that allowed this Freedom City, this Prospera to take place, and the the cryptocurrency people, the tech billionaires and cryptocurrency guys, the barons, they really urged Trump to pardon Hernandez in a January 2025 article co-authored by Roger Stone titled "How President Trump Can Crush Socialism and Save a Freedom City in Honduras." Roger Stone, remember Roger Stone? Argued that Trump should pardon Hernandez to save the Prospera experiment as a foreign zone for employment and economic development. It's called Zayde, which is basically the Spanish, the Honduran name for an SEZ. And Stone says, quote, "as a haven for Bitcoin entrepreneurs who are sick of being taxed to death in first world countries." So Prospera's governing arrangement was overseen by Hernandez, who Stone called a staunch supporter of Zayde's. And when Hernandez left office, the Supreme Court of Honduras declared those havens for Bitcoin entrepreneurs to be unconstitutional. So there's still a giant battle about if Prospera is allowed to exist. And Hernandez has very much been on the side of allowing Prospera to exist. And, it's like, on the one hand, you see Trump going after these poor fishermen that he's accusing of being small-time criminals, but the big-time criminals, okay, let's let them go because they're hooking up my friends. And it is very disgusting.
Yeah. So I hadn't made that connection before. With Honduras and Prospero. I think that is really interesting and very plausible, given the massive influence that people like Peter Thiel have within the Trump administration. And also, just to sort of close the circle, Patrick Friedman, the experiments he's conducting on himself, that is absolutely consistent with the transhumanist project, right? I mean, he has a little microchip, in his hand. Is that where it is? I can't remember.
Yeah, to unlock his Tesla. It's like in the top of his hand. Yeah.
But, these sort of biohacking experiments to modify the human organism in various ways. I mean, these are all ideas and projects that transhumanists get really excited about. So I don't know that much about Patrick Friedman's history with transhumanism, but I would not at all be surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if he called himself a transhumanist.
Oh, probably not. No, I think he's in deep with those guys. Another person that Trump pardoned is the Binance CEO, Changpeng Zhao.
Right, yeah.
And he's a white-collar criminal. Trump is basically, he's in deep with the cryptocurrency crew.
Yeah.
And, basically, crime is legal if you're in one of Trump's circles. And, it's kind of a classic authoritarian move that, you're enacting harsh punishments to random people with spurious accusations of crimes, but then for you and your buddies it's crime all day. It's just in a very, I think, open way in some
absolutely
in some sense. So this is gross. I think in a way, colonialism, imperialism, I mean, there's never been a time that these things have stopped. The United States has been doing imperialism, this whole time, right? Like, in Latin America alone, we can just think of so many examples of the U.S., overthrowing democratically elected leaders there, murdering people, and fields for being socialists, like killing indigenous people, torturing in Chile, torturing people, and installing a right-wing government. I mean, like, imperialism has been going on
Yeah.
this whole time, but now we're seeing just really just a shift in sort of flavor and aesthetic, where it is a little bit more connected to these cryptocurrency tech baron efforts. Even in Gaza, the idea that they laid out for I don't want to say post-war, because it's genocide,
Yeah.
and I don't know when they ever intend to stop that genocide. But in the paper that was released by, I think, the Tony Blair Institute, they said post-war, and they were talking about how every person in Gaza, every Palestinian in Gaza, would be given some cryptocurrency in exchange for their house that they could trade in for some land later. And it was just, they want to make a whole cryptocurrency city. They're basically imagining like Dubai, except for more AI driven. And it's these figures, these tech billionaires are really into the imperialist project, especially the ones with a lot of investments in like cryptocurrency and military AI.
Yeah. It is an extraordinary marriage of big tech and fascism, right? And there I read a lot of articles and some books that had been published over the past many years, which addressed the question of the extent to which Trump is a fascist. Right. So fascism itself is like a difficult term to define. Like there are even different ways of approaching the question of definition. Right. Like one approach is the so-called listicle account, where you basically just have a list of different features that fascist regimes tend to exemplify, like this mythical view of the past being wonderful. For example, make America great again. But also on that list would be an expansionistic foreign policy, right? And so there were scholars in the past, like during Trump 1.0, who were arguing that Trump doesn't really fit the definition entirely, largely because he doesn't have this expansionistic, i.e. imperialistic or jingoistic kind of agenda. All of those scholars now have come around to the view that, yes, actually Trump, at least Trump 2.0, is fascist, ultranationalist, far right, authoritarian with an expansionistic agenda, etc. The Trump administration fits the definition of fascism perfectly at this point. So there's really the debate about what exactly we're facing, that is over, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also kind of neo-fascism, because what distinguishes it from past iterations during the 20th century is the technological tools that it now has at its disposal, right? AI, the possibility of
just constant surveillance.
That's the next thing I was going to mention. Yeah. So this, in a sense, it's somebody tweeted a couple days ago something along the lines of, "Wow, isn't it extraordinary to live through precedented times?" Because like you were saying, colonialism, imperialism, these are things that have been going on for centuries, and the U.S. never really stopped. It's just that in past administrations over the past several decades, the imperialistic, colonialistic elements of foreign policy that has been implemented tended not to be so overt. Right. Whereas Trump is like, he just went in there, he kidnapped the dictatorial president of Venezuela. And then he said, we're doing this basically for oil, right? We're going to control oil. We're going to rebuild the infrastructure. We're going to bring a ton of money into the U.S. What that means is that the U.S. oil companies are going to potentially make a lot of money. More to say about that. Lots of qualifications there. But anyway, so the colonial imperialist aspect is overt, and that is why, in a sense, we're living through precedented times, right? But in another sense,
absolutely.
In another sense, it is unprecedented. Like the power of AI to pollute our information ecosystems at exactly the moment when we really need a clear understanding of what's going on and a shared sense of reality, right? That is being profoundly undermined. And like you said, there's surveillance opportunities that AI and big tech are enabling, companies like Peter Thiel's Palantir, which now has some connections there in Israel. Um, this makes me just feel, I would be scared enough if it was just like old fashioned fascism, of course, right?
Yeah, I know it is so creepy. I mean, even the Greenland situation too, which we've talked about on the show before.
Yeah,
The Greenland lust, the desire to do colonialism in Greenland, to I mean, Greenland, it's they're they deserve to have the government that they
yeah,
want, but right now Denmark, I'm putting it in quotes, but like they're allegedly in charge of Greenland,
yeah,
right? And so what the Trump administration is trying to negotiate to take Greenland from Denmark. Well, this isn't separate from Silicon Valley investors. They're promoting it as a site for a freedom city. I think I saw one of them a while back say that it would be like a good opportunity to sort of experiment with, what we would do on Mars or whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah,
so Trump's pick for Denmark ambassador is Ken
yeah,
Howery, who is once co-founded a VC firm with Peter Thiel. He's been a leading advocate for these cities. He is a longtime friend of Elon Musk. So Pronomos Capital, which is a VC firm that specializes in these special economic zone cities, they're trying to do it in the US, and they're also invested in Honduras. The CEO of the co-founder of Praxis, Dryden Brown, posted, I think, shortly after Trump won re-election, I went to Greenland to try to buy it. So he was the co-founder of Praxis, which is you can go to their website, but they have a lot of rhetoric about restoring Western civilization. It is about cryptocurrency, but it's also about weird racism stuff. I mean, like the idea to buy Greenland originally came out of this Silicon Valley community, for where they could do their cryptocurrency nonsense. I think there's some very traditional imperialist reasons that the Trump administration wants Greenland as well, a military base. But the idea is strongly linked to Peter Thiel and, to kind of an outgrowth of this seasteading movement that was big around 2009, 2010. Pronomos Capital, it's a hub for funding experimental cities. They
yeah.
they want to do like Prospera Part 2 in Greenland, which I have to think is or Prospera Part 5 or whatever. I have to think that the weather in Greenland will be a little more difficult for that, but
Yeah.
they want to experiment with conditions that are more difficult because their ultimate goal is doing this kind of nonsense on other
Yeah.
planets.
And also, just to be clear, I mean, the US has had an interest in Greenland for ages, but it's this renewed
Yeah.
push that may
Yeah.
have origins in the tech world. I mean, Greenland is also rich in like resources that could be used to manufacture, computers, and so on. And a
Yeah.
lot of those minerals are becoming even more accessible thanks to the thawing permafrost. Right? I mean, I mentioned climate change before, the way that Venezuelan oil could potentially contribute to the continuation of the exacerbation of climate change in the coming decades. That's very worrisome. The upside from the fascist regime's perspective is that, well, less ice on Greenland means it's just easier to get a hold of all these minerals that we think are important for, building our mass and slopificatory machines, as I now call them.
Yeah.
So it's just it's
Yeah.
an absolutely dire situation. I had a friend of mine write me today and say, it seems like as soon as you fled the US for Europe, like shit has really hit the fan. you know?
Yeah, you were all that was keeping it together.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's um, uh, picked a right time to get the hell out. I mean, it just looks really scary. But of course, like, I have a friend who moved to Canada, and the sort of joke I was saying in my head was that, well, Canada's going to be invaded soon, but I'm much safer
Yeah.
over here on the European continent. I'm not sure that's the case anymore, for reasons I specified at the beginning. It's just not hard to see how there could be this cascading series of causes that catapults the world into a spiral of military conflict. Given that Trump is now acting on the imperialistic rhetoric that he's been uttering now for many, many years. He seems to be dead set on actually, you know, making it a reality. So I don't know. I think it's entirely plausible that the U.S. tries to annex Greenland in the next like 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, every time I think that something is so fucking nuts that there's no way that Trump would do it, he does it
Yeah.
anyway. So who knows? I mean, this guy he's crazy. He seems like he loves doing stuff that it's just utterly insane. Kidnapping the Venezuelan president is
Yeah.
insane.
I think that he doesn't really distinguish between good and bad press. Sometimes he talks about how he doesn't like bad press, but my guess is that he's such a narcissist that even if the news networks are flashing his picture on the screen to say this guy is terrible, he gets a kind of like warm fuzzy feeling. He's like, they're paying attention. People are looking at my face. So I don't think the reason I mention this is all of the like the blowback. I mean, there's been a fair amount of bad press in response to Venezuela, even on like mainstream outlets like CNN, which I check pretty regularly just to get a sense of what the normies are thinking, the centrists and the libs. But I think he's just not deterred by that. So what is deterring him? Well, nothing. I mean, Pete Hegseth is not going to tell Trump to chill out about Greenland, right? I mean, Trump 1.0, he actually had some, I would consider them to be unsavory characters, like John Bolton, for example, who's as far as I'm concerned,
neocons.
is what?
Just standard neocons.
Neocons.
And he has some standard neocons this time too. Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
You
But Rubio seems to have drank the Kool-Aid at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't about tech at all, but, Marco Rubio is kind of myopically obsessed with overthrowing the Cuban government. Yeah. And his interest in Venezuela is not separate from that. This has nothing to do with tech, but it is something that I know about, so talk about it for a minute. Cuba is having huge shortages right now, huge shortages of both oil, food, I mean, really all the supplies they need, medical supplies, clothes, but the things that are most affecting the lives of Cubans on a daily basis right now because they're needed to survive is, fuel and food. And fuel has traditionally come from Venezuela. They are one of the only countries that, because of the sanctions, because of the blockade against Cuba, it has been able to trade. And for a long time there was this tradition of Venezuela offering Cuba fuel at a lower rate because Venezuela had so many Cuban doctors come. I don't know if you know about this, but Cuba has some of the best doctors in the world, and a lot of them, a lot of them do like a few years abroad, after medical school, where they serve in other countries that put doctors, and there has been an exchange there for a long time. And as part of that, Venezuela has reduced the price of fuel to Cuba. So with the sanctions that Venezuela has been under since Trump, that's been a lot harder for Venezuela to do, because in order to offset the sanctions, they've had to sell their fuel, their oil to really like whoever can pay the
Yeah.
most. And that's part of the reason that Venezuela was, so severely sanctioned in the first place. So what that's led to in Cuba is, brownouts. The power often goes out like multiple times a day. Obviously that's a huge issue for, food safety, for refrigeration. I mean, just imagine if the power was out at your, house or your workplace for several hours every day or very often, or you never knew when it was going to be on or off. It creates all the same inconveniences in Cuba, and also it's been extremely hard on Cuba's tourist industry. There's not gasoline, so it's hard for people to get in cars from one place to another. It's people are like kind of stuck where they are in some cases because gasoline is seriously rationed and has been set aside for only uses for tourists, which like is a topic that we could talk about for another day. But I am a big recommender of going to Cuba and spending your money there because it's one of the best ways to like get money to Cuba. With the embargo, it's really hard, in other ways. So go to Cuba. If you want to talk to me about going to Cuba, I am always down to talk about it. I love that topic. It's a wonderful place to visit. But, with sort of additional U.S. control of Venezuela, like I'm terrified of how this is going to play out for Cuba. I don't know how they're going to get fuel. And that was the outcome that Marco Rubio wanted to create, to, send them from severe shortages to way more severe shortages or potentially almost nothing at all. This is definitely really, really scary time. And, obviously the U.S. has been, messing with Cuba, trying to control Cuba, trying to, overthrow the Cuban government for many decades at this point. This isn't a new idea. This is one of the oldest ideas.
Absolutely. And, Cuba should be admired for having achieved all the things that they achieved given the sanctions. And the fact that the U.S., in their backyard has been trying to utterly demolish them for decades. And they still, nonetheless, were able to, create this like really successful healthcare system. Like you said, I mean, there are lots of top-notch doctors. The other thing you mentioned, Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. There are others on the political right in the U.S. who have talked about their ancestors, parents, grandparents, fleeing Cuba. Specifically saying that they're fleeing Castro's regime. That is
they left before.
That is a lie. That is a lie. The Batista regime, which was in control before Castro, that was.
And Batista was like he was an army man and a U.S. puppet. He was not a communist.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So they were fleeing, and in some cases, their family returned once Castro was in power. So it's absolutely insane. And this. In Venezuela now, like they're talking about, we're not really like, we're not changing the regime, but and in a sense, kind of they aren't, right? I mean, the situation's still pretty dire for Venezuelans. Also, literally, Trump is saying, like, I am going to. I mean, the press secretary for the White House, I'm forgetting her name off the top of my head, although I know it.
Caroline Leavitt.
Yes, was saying what Venezuela does, the policies it implements, the way it proceeds moving forward, will be dictated entirely by the U.S. Dictated, right? And the Daily Show had this quite humorous clip where they said, dictated, like we're going to be the dictators, right? So we're implementing kind of a dictatorship in Venezuela. And oh my God, this story has just happened so many times. Even the situation in Iran is a great example. 1953 with the coup, where we put Muhammad Pahlavi, I think I'm pronouncing his last name, in charge, who's basically just a dictator because the previous regime, which is democratically elected, decided to nationalize their oil production. Right before it was the Anglo-Iranian oil company that was there, which later became British Petroleum, which we know as BP. Same thing in Venezuela. Trump is saying, oh, well, the Venezuelans stole our oil. Well, what does he mean by that? Well, when Hugo Chavez was in charge, he nationalized the oil production there. He took control, from the U.S. companies. Said, no, this is our oil. We should be able to do with it what we want. We should be able to profit from it, and so on. Exactly.
And that's an attitude towards Latin America that long precedes Trump. That the resources and natural resources in Latin American countries belong to the U.S. instead, belong to U.S. companies. No, they don't.
Yeah.
They belong to the people who live there. I mean, it would simply be absurd. Like, nobody would be like, Yellowstone Park belongs to China.
Yeah.
No, like, that's not the way it goes,
It's so blatant and flagrant and egregious. It's just kind of shocking. It's just never been clear, I think, particularly given social media and the fact that people can, exchange ideas like never before. It's never been so obvious that we're the bad guys. We're the baddies in the world. We just do whatever the hell we want. We don't give a shit about international law or national sovereignty. And so that's the other thing. Like the implications for international law are pretty dire. They're pretty dismal.
Oh yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, in terms of like, whether we're in a position to, criticize other countries for abuses of power. There was one more thing that we wanted to talk about on the show today, which doesn't really have anything to do with tech, except in the sense that it's being enacted by the people elected, with the money of these tech people. It was the murder of Renee Nicole Macklin Good by ICE yesterday.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. I watched the video. I should say videos. There are at least 3 that I've seen. One of a doctor who's saying, "Please let me help her." The other, of course, is the one that went most viral, of where you see the entire incident unfold, and it's traumatic to watch. And then there's another one taken by some guy standing on his porch, and I don't know. It's just, is there going to be any justice for this for the victim? Probably not, right? I mean, the ICE agent has immunity, supposedly, and I don't know. It's just it just indicates I know I'm stating the obvious, but it indicates such a dangerous direction that the U.S. is headed. No one is safe. This is an American citizen who was basically trying to get out of the way of ICE trucks.
In Minneapolis,
she's a Christian. She's like, apparently is a very dedicated Christian who went on like mission trips and so on. And she was shot in the face.
Mother of 3. Yeah. And she was fleeing, and the driver or the ICE agent demands that he comes up to her window and shoots her 3 times or 2 times. I don't know exactly how many times he shot her. I think that's still being determined. It killed her immediately.
Yeah. So it's we'll see where this goes. Obviously, something that comes to mind is the situation, if I'm correct off the top of my head, during Nixon's presidency, when 4 students were shot at, I think it was the University of Ohio. Right? I mean, the Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. I think
Kent State.
Kent State, that's what it was. Yeah. Wrote a song about this famously. So obviously things like that was a dark moment in American history. Things got better in certain respects. We have 3 more years of a Trump presidency at least, right? maybe like another 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about connections to tech, the Trump administration has called her a domestic terrorist.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. There is 0 fucking evidence for this. This is they don't have one thing that supports this accusation. They're just trying to justify, post facto, why they killed her. There's just literally no evidence that she was involved in any kind of terrorism at all. She was an award-winning
Yeah.
poet. She had 3 kids. She was a guitarist.
Yeah.
It seems like she was spending her time raising her family and making art. So there's all these accounts on X that are amplifying this terrorism accusation. And I think I mean, I don't know, but it seems to me like a lot of them are
Yeah.
bots. And they're really trying to create this sense that, like they killed her for, some reason, that she was a danger to others. Like, no, they murdered her in cold blood because they could. I mean, it's just a horrible situation. I mean, like, ICE is basically acting as, fascist thug troops, like, marching through the streets. And I mean, I think, a lot of Trump supporters imagined that they would only be, going after immigrants or brown people.
Criminals in
But
particular, right? That was the promise. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then they're going after
They are
everyone.
America's
They
Gestapo,
just
established by
exactly.
what to quote JD Vance, established by America's Hitler, right? And I think the claim that ICE and Kristi Noem and the others are making is that the victim was engaged in domestic terrorism because she had weaponized her car in an attempt to drive over the ICE agent. The only problem with that is we have video of it. And it's clear
Yeah, where she's clearly not trying to
she
do
has her
that.
wheel
Yeah.
turned the other direction. The guy's at the very corner of the vehicle. She's not skidding her tires. There is absolutely zero justification for lethal force. There isn't even justification for non-lethal force, like what police sometimes do in those situations, which is pull out a hammer and smash a window to try to reach in to get a hold of the. I mean, she's just there. She was waving by ice trucks. Well, ice trucks. That's not the right. It's not the right term. But ice in their like pickup trucks, waving them by, and then they kind of signal to her that she needs to get out of there. And then an ICE agent tries to open her door, it appears, or something like that. And so she's like, okay, I'm going to get out of here. And that's when she's shot 3-4 times. It's really shocking. So the reason I brought up the situation at Kent University is like things got better after that. We have 3 more years of Trump. We'll see what happens. Because
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your optimism. We're like in reverse today. I appreciate your optimism, and I don't share it at all.
No. I'm saying we've got 3 more years. Like things could get really bad. Like I don't know. There could be this.
Oh, I thought you meant that they could get better.
Well, there could be sufficient public backlash that forces ICE to moderate their tactics a bit more, right? I mean, public protestation has had an effect, right? I mean, Jimmy Kimmel was fired and then he was reinstated, right? So we're not powerless. There are a lot of us, and when we join together in unison and cry out, we've seen that can actually make a difference in terms of the administration's policies. So maybe something like things will get a little bit better, but maybe they won't. Maybe Trump will, he just won't. I mean, he seems to just not give a shit at this point. He just doesn't give a shit about norms. He doesn't. I don't know. It's just really, it's a really scary situation, and I'm glad I got the fuck out of the U.S. when I did.
Yeah. Well, I'm jealous. We'll see what happens. Listeners, thank you so much for listening to the show. And I want to say a special thanks, especially to our Patreon subscribers. We have a bunch of new subscribers who subscribed at the end of the year. And I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much to Jerry and Sarah, Matt, Zuzi, JK, John, Burhan, Tom, Perceptifor. Somebody's name is Dan is this close to losing it. Naomi, Julie Schickling, Huxley, Courtney, and Valerie Ann. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining. And we will be back with more Patreon only episodes soon. If you are a super supporter, we did a thing where we would we said we would mail you stickers at the end of last year. I have those stickers. They finally came to my house, so I'm going to go to the post office and mail them to you this week. And if you weren't a super supporter yet, or you didn't send us your address, that's okay. We are going to be doing more merch in the near future, and you'll have your chance to get a sticker with our cool logo on it. But I just wanted to say, like, thank you so much for helping us keep the show going. Shout out to our producer Michelle. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being such an excellent editor. And we really appreciate it.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
Happy New Year, everyone. Sorry that it's a weird time.
Happy New Year.
All right, take care.